There is a certain kind of person who lives two lives at the same time. From the outside, they look completely fine. They show up on time. They smile at the right moments. They laugh at the right jokes. They say I'm good, thanks without even thinking about it. And everyone around them believes it, because they are very, very good at this. But here is what nobody sees. The second they are alone, the moment the door closes behind them, the moment the last text is sent and the phone screen goes dark, something shifts. The shoulders drop, the smile disappears. And a deep, heavy exhaustion sets in, not the kind that comes from running or working hard, but the kind that comes from performing, from spending the entire day being a version of yourself that everyone around you finds acceptable. Most people look at these people and think they are well-adjusted, easy to be around, normal, happy even, but the truth is they are often the most exhausted people in the room. Because what they are doing, what they have been doing for years, sometimes for their entire lives, is not living. It is acting. And no matter how good an actor becomes, the performance always has a cost. Today, we are going to decode the psychology of people who feel like they are always acting normal. What is really happening beneath the surface? Where it came from, and most importantly, how to begin living as yourself, perhaps for the very first time. So where does this come from? Why would a person spend their life performing normalcy instead of simply being themselves? The answer, almost always, begins in childhood. Psychologist Donald Winnicott introduced a concept that explains this perfectly. He called it the false self. According to Winnicott, when a child grows up in an environment where their authentic emotions are not safe to express, where crying is met with silence, where anger is punished, where needs are ignored or criticized, the child's mind does something very intelligent. It builds a second self, a polished, managed, acceptable version of the child that the outside world can interact with. This false self learns to read the room. It learns what reactions get approval and what emotions make others uncomfortable. And it becomes very, very skilled at producing exactly what is needed to keep the environment safe. Sounds a little familiar, doesn't it? The problem is that this false self, built as a shield in childhood, does not simply disappear when the child grows up. It follows them into adulthood, into friendships, into workplaces, into relationships. Because the nervous system that built it does not know the danger has passed, it is still running the same old program. Hide the real you, show the acceptable you, stay safe. There is also a second pathway. Even people who did not grow up in emotionally unsafe homes can develop this pattern. Neuroscience calls this social calibration. Our brains are wired to monitor social environments and adjust our behavior to fit in. But for some people, this mechanism is turned up far too high. Their brain runs a constant background scan. Am I too much right now? Is this face I'm making too honest? Is what I just said making people uncomfortable? The result is a person who is always, always performing, even when there is no audience, even when they are completely alone. Because by the time they are adults, the performance has become so automatic that they can barely tell where it ends and where they begin. Let's look at what this actually looks like in real life, because this is not an abstract idea. It shows up in very specific, very recognizable ways. Sign 1. They have mastered the "I'm fine" response so completely that even they start to believe it. Ask them how they are doing and the answer comes out before the question even finishes. Fine, good, can't complain. It is automatic, practiced, completely disconnected from what is actually happening inside. What is interesting, though, is that this is not deliberate dishonesty. They are not lying on purpose. It is more like the true answer, the real, honest, messy one, lives in a part of them that they have learned to keep very quiet. So when someone asks, "How are you?" the polished version answers instantly, before the deeper part even gets a chance to speak. Have you ever been asked how you are doing and realized, a few hours later, that you had no idea what the real answer was? That the automatic response came out so fast that you never actually checked in with yourself at all? That is the false self at work, so well trained that even its host cannot always hear what is underneath it. Sign 2. They shift who they are depending on who is in the room. Around their family, they become the responsible one. With their coworkers, they become the professional one. With their friends, they become the fun one. And somehow, in each setting, they manage to do it convincingly. From the outside, this looks like social intelligence. But from the inside, it feels like something very different. It feels like having no home, like being a guest everywhere and belonging nowhere. Because when you are always adjusting yourself to fit the container, you never quite know what shape you actually are. Psychologists call this identity diffusion, a state where a person's sense of self becomes so flexible, so dependent on external cues, that it loses its center of gravity. The person does not have one self. They have a collection of performances, and the quiet, terrifying question underneath all of them is, if I took every performance away, what would actually be left? Sign 3. Social situations feel like a job they never clock out of. They walk into a party and something in their brain shifts into work mode. They monitor the room. They manage their expressions. They calibrate their voice, their laugh, their eye contact. They make sure they are contributing enough to the conversation, but not so much that they seem overwhelming. They are tracking 10 invisible variables at once, and nobody in the room knows any of this is happening. Because from the outside they look relaxed, easy, normal. But the moment they get home, the moment they finally close the door and no one is watching, the exhaustion hits all at once. Like a muscle that has been held in tension for hours, suddenly releasing. They do not want to do anything. They do not want to talk. They do not want to exist in public for at least the next 2 days. Psychologists call this emotional labor, the invisible work of managing your own feelings in order to produce a specific effect on others. And for these people, emotional labor is not something they do occasionally. It is something they do constantly. Every interaction is a performance. Every performance costs energy, and the bill always comes due when the audience finally leaves. Sign 4. They feel a strange guilt whenever they express an authentic emotion. Something genuinely hurts them. Maybe a friend says something dismissive. Maybe they are treated unfairly at work. The emotion rises up naturally, real and honest and completely understandable. But then, almost immediately, something else rises up too. A kind of internal security guard that steps in and asks, is this appropriate? Is this too much? Are you going to make everyone uncomfortable with this? And so the emotion gets quickly smoothed over. The face rearranges itself. The voice returns to neutral, and they say something like, "Oh, it's fine, I'm not that bothered," but they are bothered, very much so. This is one of the most painful parts of this pattern, because the constant suppression of authentic emotion does not make the emotion disappear. It just pushes it inward. And over time, all of those unexpressed moments, the things that were never allowed to be said, the pain that was never allowed to be real, pile up silently in a place that has no language for them. Just wait. Sign 5. They sometimes do not know what they actually want. Ask them where they want to eat dinner and they feel a low-grade panic. Ask them what they are passionate about and they stall, not because they are incapable of having preferences, but because so much of their life has been spent managing the preferences of others that their own have gone quiet. When was the last time you made a choice based entirely on what you wanted, with zero consideration of what anyone else would think of it? For these people, that question is harder to answer than it looks, because the habit of performing, of shaping themselves around other people's expectations and comfort, has a side effect. It slowly erodes the signal that says, "This is mine, this is real, this is me." And without that signal, making even small, ordinary decisions can feel confusing. Because the compass that should be pointing to the self has been pointing outward for so long that it no longer knows how to turn back. Sign 6. Being alone does not feel like rest. It feels like the only moment they are truly real. For most people, alone time is enjoyable, peaceful, quiet. But for these people, it carries something extra. It is not just relaxation, it is relief. It is the only moment in the day when the performance can fully stop, when the face does not have to do anything, when the voice does not have to perform a particular tone, when they can sit in whatever emotional state they are actually in, tired, sad, confused, nothing at all, without worrying whether that state is making anyone else uncomfortable. This is why they are fiercely protective of their alone time in a way that people around them often do not understand. It is not antisocial. It is survival. It is the only scheduled break they get from a performance that never officially ends. Sign 7. Deep down, they wonder if anyone actually knows them at all. Not because the people in their life are uncaring, but because the version of themselves that those people know is, in many ways, curated, edited, safe for public consumption. The real one, the one with the confusing feelings and the opinions that might not land well, and the needs that have always seemed like too much, that one has rarely had the chance to be truly seen. And so even in the middle of a room full of people who love them, they can feel profoundly, quietly alone, because what is being loved is the performance, and what is being quietly hidden, somewhere behind all of that, is the self. Here is the truth that nobody talks about. When you spend years performing normalcy, you do not just get tired. You begin to lose track of the line between the performance and the person. It is like wearing a mask for so long that you forget it is a mask. You start to think, maybe this is just who I am. Maybe the polished, calm, always fine version of me is the real version, and the deeper, messier, more honest version is just a problem I need to keep managing. This is the most painful part of the pattern, not the exhaustion, although the exhaustion is real and it is deep, but the slow, creeping erosion of self, the sense of being a stranger to yourself, of lying in bed at night and not quite being able to locate the person you actually are underneath all the roles you have played throughout the day. Psychology calls this self-alienation, a state where a person has become so disconnected from their own authentic inner experience that they can no longer reliably read it. They do not know what they feel. They do not know what they want. They do not know what they would do or say if they were not, for once, being watched. And if you have been living this way for a long time, that disconnection is not just uncomfortable. It is genuinely frightening, because somewhere underneath the carefully maintained surface is a real person, a full, complex, unedited human being. And they are waiting, very patiently, to be given permission to exist. But here is what is important to understand. This pattern, this lifetime of performing, of managing, of carefully presenting an acceptable version of yourself to the world is not a character flaw. It is not weakness. It is not dishonesty. It is one of the most sophisticated survival strategies a human brain can develop. It means that at some point in your life, probably very early on, you were in an environment where being fully yourself felt dangerous, where your authentic emotions were too much, too inconvenient, or simply not safe. And your mind, because it is brilliant and it loves you, found a way to keep you protected. It built you a mask, and it kept you safe inside it. But you are not that child anymore. The environment has changed, and the mask that once protected you is now the very thing keeping you from being known. So what can these people actually do? The first shift is simply this. Begin noticing the difference between what you perform and what you feel. Not in a dramatic way, not by tearing the mask off all at once, just by developing a small habit of checking in with the real answer before the automatic answer fires. When someone asks how you are doing, pause for one breath. Notice what is actually true. You do not have to say it out loud yet. Just know it yourself. The second shift is this. Give yourself at least one space in your life where the performance is not required. One relationship, one conversation, one journal, one quiet corner of the day where the authentic version of you is allowed to show up exactly as it is, confused, tired, uncertain, real. Not as a project to fix, just as a person to know. Because the self you have been hiding is not something to be ashamed of. It is not too much. It is, quite simply, you. And you deserve to be known. Not the edited version, not the performance, but the full, honest, deeply human person underneath all of it. That person has been waiting long enough. If any of this felt familiar, if you recognized yourself somewhere in the exhaustion of performing, in the loneliness of being loved for a version of yourself rather than for the real one, I want you to know something. The fact that you are aware of this is not small, it is everything. It means that the real you is still there, still watching, still waiting, and it has not given up. The performance was never who you are. It was what you learned to do to survive. And now, slowly, gently, on your own terms, you are allowed to unlearn it. You are allowed to be awkward. You are allowed to be uncertain.